A young man stands alone on the ice. It is the final skater of Group 4 at the All Japan Championships, and his program is the Phantom of the Opera. The performance has barely begun when everything starts to slip away from him. On his opening triple axel, he loses his balance badly. He tries to recover, but the rhythm is already broken. The score does not even reach his season's best, 58.07 points, 9th place. The applause inside the arena is warm, but it is not the kind of applause given to a champion. It is the kind of applause that says, "You did your best." At that moment, he is not a top star. He is not a favorite to challenge the world. He is simply one more singles skater who might quietly disappear from the sport a few years later. That young man's name is Ryuichi Kihara, and this is where the greatest twist of his life begins. The man who could never reach the top alone would one day become an Olympic gold medalist in a completely different discipline. The skater who finished 9th by himself would become world number 1 the moment he stepped into the role of supporting someone else. Alone, he could not stand on the highest stage. Together with a partner, he reached it. So why could a man who could not win alone become unbeatable as part of a pair? Why did someone who could never become the main character finally shine when he chose to help someone else shine? This is the story of a man who was never truly complete by himself. Let us go back in time, long before he met Riku Miura, back to the days when Ryuichi Kihara stood on the ice alone. Kihara was a men's singles skater at Chukko University, competing in one of Japan's strongest figure skating environments. He had even represented Japan at the World Junior level, so he was not unknown. He had real talent, he had ability, but he could never reach the top. At the All Japan Championships, the biggest domestic stage in the country, his best result was 12th place for 3 straight years, not first, not a podium finish, not the next big name heading for the world stage. He was good, but always one step short. And no matter how hard he tried, that final step never seemed to close. Think back to that Phantom of the Opera performance, the triple axel mistake, the broken rhythm, the 9th place finish. That night was not an exception. In many ways, it showed exactly who Kihara was during his singles career. He had strength, he had heart, but he could not finish the fight, so why could he not win? One reason was his body. At the time, people reportedly gave him a painful nickname. They called him Weak Kihara because he lacked the explosive power needed for men's singles jumps. Imagine how cruel that must feel for an athlete, to be told that you do not have enough power, to hear that the very thing you need most is the thing your body cannot fully give you. Effort can improve many things, but the instant burst needed for elite jumps cannot be created by willpower alone. No matter how badly he wanted it, no matter how much he pushed himself, that explosive spring was always just out of reach. And still, he kept standing on the ice. But there was another struggle. His own body would not always listen to him. During his teenage years, Kihara suffered from growing pains. His body was changing, his bones and joints were hurting, and jumps that once felt possible suddenly became unstable. It was not only about technique anymore. It must have felt as if his own body had become his opponent. At that time, people described him as free-spirited and unpredictable. There was something casual about the way he approached practice and competition, and when his jump problems became too heavy, there was even a period when he told people, "I'm going to take a break," and then disappeared from contact for a while. This is the darker beginning of Ryuichi Kihara's singles career. We often imagine top athletes as unbreakable people. We think they are always disciplined, always focused, always able to push through pain and failure. But the young Kihara was not like that. He struggled with pain. He was worn down by results that would not come. He was frustrated by jumps that refused to work. And at one point, he seemed so exhausted that he simply stepped away. That weakness is exactly what makes his story feel human. I cannot help but admire him. Truly strong people are rarely born strong. They become strong because they have lived through moments when they wanted to walk away. Ryuichi Kihara knew those moments. He knew what it felt like to want to quit, to disappear, to leave the ice behind forever. And yet he came back. In many ways, the fact that he returned is far more meaningful than never running away at all. But returning did not magically change reality. The same obstacles were still waiting for him. Same questions remained unanswered. The wall of limited jumping power, the wall of disappointing results, the wall of being unable to break through on his own. Then one day, an unexpected opportunity arrived, a move from singles skating to pair skating. To understand how significant that moment was, you need to understand what pair skating looked like in Japan at the time. Today, thanks largely to the success of Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, pair skating receives attention and respect. But back then, it was a very different story. In fact, among many skaters, being asked to switch from singles to pairs was sometimes viewed as something close to a career demotion. Some even interpreted it as a message that said, "Your future in singles is over." Imagine hearing that. Imagine dedicating your entire life to one discipline and then being told to try something that many people considered less prestigious. In the summer of 2011, the Japan Skating Federation held a special tryout to identify future pair skaters. Ryuichi Kihara was invited. The truth is, he had no desire to switch. He wanted to remain a singles skater. He wanted to continue standing alone on the ice, winning or losing on his own terms. That was the world he knew. That was the world he loved. Yet circumstances slowly pushed him toward a door he never intended to open. According to reports, when asked about the possibility of the switch, Kihara's father simply responded, "It's difficult." Those two words carried enormous weight. For a parent, watching a child abandon the dream he had pursued for years is never easy. Watching him leave the discipline he loved for a path filled with uncertainty is even harder. And here we discover another layer of darkness in Kihara's story. This was not a dream he chose. When we talk about successful people, we often describe their turning points as bold decisions. We say they bravely embraced new challenges and confidently stepped into unknown worlds. But for Ryuichi Kihara, the move to pair skating was not a glamorous leap of faith. It felt more like arriving at the only road left open. Think about what that must have felt like. Leaving a world where you had already struggled to succeed and entering another world that many people valued even less. Starting over from zero, learning entirely new skills, depending on another person, building trust, learning timing, learning lifts, learning throws, learning an entirely new language of movement, and doing all of it while wondering if you truly belonged there. In January 2013, after the National Sports Festival, Kihara officially said goodbye to men's singles. More than a decade of effort came to an end. The missed opportunities, the frustrating results, the jump problems, the nights when he wanted to disappear, the years spent chasing a dream that always seemed just out of reach. He left all of it behind and stepped into the world of pair skating. His first partner was Naomi Takahashi. Remember that name. Years later, she would be one of the people celebrating his greatest triumphs with tears in her eyes. But before all of that happened, Kihara had to learn something entirely new. What does it mean to become the person who supports someone else? In singles skating, everything revolves around you. Every success is yours. Every mistake is yours. The spotlight belongs entirely to you. Pair skating is different. The male skater often becomes the foundation. He lifts, he catches, he supports. He protects, he makes sure his partner lands safely. The audience's eyes frequently follow the woman flying through the air while the man quietly makes it all possible. Suddenly, Kihara was no longer trying to be the star. He was becoming the person who helped someone else shine. From one perspective, that could look like another defeat. A man who could not become the leading character, becoming a supporting character instead. But history would eventually reveal something remarkable. The power he lacked as a singles skater became the exact strength needed in pair skating. The qualities that once seemed like weaknesses became advantages. Earlier, I asked a question. Why could a man who failed alone become a champion with a partner? Perhaps the answer begins here. Maybe he was never meant to be completed by himself. Maybe those years of finishing outside the spotlight were not proof that he lacked talent. Maybe they were proof that half of his story had not yet arrived. The missing half was still out there, waiting, and until he met a young skater named Ryuichi Miura, that story remained unfinished. Yet the path ahead was anything but easy. Naomi Takahashi was already one of the most accomplished pair skaters Japan had ever produced. She had experience, she had achievements, she had already competed on the world stage. In many ways, Kihara felt like the less accomplished partner. Still, together they progressed quickly, shockingly quickly. Within little more than a year of entering pair skating, Kihara found himself standing on Olympic ice at the 2014 Sochi Winter Games, competing in both the team and individual events. Think about that for a moment. The Olympics had always seemed unreachable as a singles skater, yet through pair skating, he arrived there almost immediately. Once again, the paradox appeared. Alone, he could not reach the stage. Together, he could, but there was no time to fully appreciate it. Everything happened too fast. The learning curve was steep. The expectations were enormous. Before he could catch his breath, he was already competing among the world's best. Then came another difficult chapter, not physical pain, emotional pain. Results did not improve as quickly as he hoped. Competing alongside an accomplished partner, Kihara began blaming himself whenever things went wrong. Naomi Takahashi later revealed how deeply he struggled. He felt guilty. He felt responsible. He believed he was holding the team back. Eventually, he said something heartbreaking. "I think we should split up." Notice something important here. The pressure did not come from critics. It came from himself. The voice hurting him most was the one inside his own head. Maybe I'm not suited for pair skating. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I'm preventing my partner from reaching her potential. Those thoughts can destroy a person. When criticism comes from others, you can fight back. But when it comes from yourself, there is nowhere to run. By 2015, the partnership ended. Another dream was over. Another chapter closed. And once again, Ryuichi Kihara found himself alone, yet he refused to quit. That more than anything else may be the defining trait of his character. He doubted himself more than anyone else ever could. But he never took off the skates. He formed a second partnership with Maya Sasaki and began rebuilding once again. Slowly, patiently, they worked their way back onto the national podium. But fate still was not finished testing him. Between 2018 and 2019, injuries began piling up. Pain became a constant companion. Then came one of the most difficult moments of his career. In February 2019, during practice, he suffered a concussion. Doctors ordered extended rest. His shoulder was already struggling. His body was breaking down. And this is where many people misunderstand what injuries do to athletes. The physical pain is only part of it. The loneliness is often worse. While teammates train, compete, and improve, you sit outside the rink waiting, unable to help, unable to participate, unable to know whether you will ever return to your previous level. Rehabilitation is repetitive. It is lonely. It is exhausting. Progress feels painfully slow. One day you can do something, the next day you cannot. And Kihara experienced that cycle again and again. Years later, speaking about recovery from another injury, he calmly said that if pain appeared, he immediately left the ice. Those words came from someone who had spent years learning how to live alongside pain. By 2019, his second partnership had also ended. Now look at the situation honestly. He was 26 years old, not old in everyday life, but no longer young in elite figure skating. His body was injured. His shoulder hurt. He had suffered a concussion. His first pair had ended. His second pair had ended. There was no partner beside him. And deep inside, the same question remained. Maybe I'm not meant for this. This was the future Olympic champion 7 years before Olympic gold. He was seriously considering retirement. This is the darkest point of the story. If anyone had looked at his situation and concluded that his career was over, nobody would have blamed them. Years of effort had led to injuries, uncertainty, and an empty rink. But then, just when the light seemed ready to disappear completely, someone offered him one final opportunity. A coach introduced him to a young skater, a 17-year-old girl. She had also lost her partner and was searching for a future. On one side stood a 26-year-old man thinking about retirement. On the other stood a teenager whose own path had suddenly disappeared. To most people, it looked like two dead ends meeting each other. But history would tell a different story. The man who had doubted himself for years accepted one more outstretched hand, just one more, and that single decision changed everything. The reason Ryuichi Kihara's story resonates so deeply is because he was never portrayed as a flawless genius. He was not someone who dominated through overwhelming natural talent. Instead, he struggled. He was told he lacked power. He battled growing pains. He fought through injuries. He disappeared when things became overwhelming. He doubted himself. He experienced failed partnerships. He endured loneliness. He carried disappointment after disappointment. Few elite athletes have accumulated so many setbacks, yet perhaps that is exactly why his story matters. Because every time life knocked him down, he found a way to stand up one more time. Those tears we would later see on the world's biggest stage were not signs of weakness. They were proof of everything he had survived. They were the tears of someone who had fallen more times than most people could imagine and still chose to reach forward one more time. Maybe the most important question in life is not how high we can climb. Maybe it is whether we can believe in ourselves one more time after losing faith. Maybe it is whether we can reach for another person's hand after enduring pain alone. And perhaps that is the lesson hidden inside Ryuichi Kihara's journey. In the next chapter, the story truly begins. the story of a man on the verge of retirement, the story of a teenage girl searching for a future, and the 7 extraordinary years that would take them from uncertainty in Canada to the very top of the world.